The railways have played a major role in the history of the DPRK. Dating back to the days of the Korean Empire, and spanning the decades of occupation by Japan, the founding of the modern country, the depths of warfare, and right up to the country today, where the national railway network serves as one of the main forms of public transport in the country, especially between towns, cities, and provinces. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, by which I mean from the start, I'm sure you're thinking, wait, he's definitely covered this already. And you'd be right. The first video on this channel, back in 2020, was a history of the Korean railway network. It's a video I'm very proud of, and a topic I've long been interested in. However, since then, I've been learning new video making techniques and thought it was time to revisit a classic. So, here is the Korean railway network explained. Again. So, let's start at the beginning, just after the turn of the century, in the days of the Korean Empire. In 1904, the imperialist government in Japan forced the Korean Empire to sign over its rights to railway projects to the Japanese, and, as such, construction began on the first railway line in northern Korea. The Gyeonggi Line ran from the capital, Gyeongsong, modern-day Seoul, along the western seaboard to the northern border with China at Sinuiju. The nomenclature of most railway lines in Korea is relatively intuitive, taking one syllable from each terminus and adding the suffix son, meaning line. So this line from Gyeongsong to Sinuiju took the name Gyeonggi-son. The line was governed under the Temporary Military Railway Administration until 1906, when the Japanese forced Korea into subjugation, first as a protectorate, and later in 1910 as a colonial possession. The government then nationalised the railway network under a single entity. For ease of storytelling, I'm going to refer to the Japanese Imperial Railway Company as the Chosen Government Railway for the rest of this video. However, it's worth noting that this name did vary a lot. From the National Railway and later Korea Railway before colonisation, to the Chosen Government Railway until 1917, and latterly merging into the South Manchuria Railway Company as the Mantetsu Gyeongsong Bureau, until settling back onto the Chosen Government Railway until 1945. Basically, until we get to 1945, it's safe to assume that all the railways are operated either by the Japanese government in Korea, one of their subsidiaries, or by a few small private companies. But we'll get into a bit of that later. That's enough terminology. In 1909, construction began on another railway project, this time linking the city of Haejo, modern-day Pyongyang, with the port city of Chinnampo. This 57-kilometre section of track was opened in October 1910 and allowed freight from the port at the mouth of the Taedong River to be transported directly to Haejo by rail, rather than by boat. 1 year later, the first leg of the Pyongyang Colliery Line was completed, running southeast from Pyongyang to ship anthracite from nearby mines into the city for processing. There are a lot of these small mining lines in Korea, but we're mentioning this one for good reason, so watch this space. By August 1914, a railway line built to link the capital, Gyeongsong, with the northeastern seaboard had reached the coastal city of Wonsan. As such, this 173-kilometre line was renamed the Gyeongwon Line. Originally, the Japanese had planned to use this major new rail link to connect the port of Busan at the southern tip of Korea with the capital of the Manchukuo puppet state in Manchuria, it being unclear exactly which route the line would have taken. The Mitsubishi Iron Foundry in the small river port town of Gyeonggi-po, today Seongnim City, on the banks of the Taedong River, was, thus far, not connected to the national railway network. And so, 1915 saw the completion of the Kyomi-Po line, which linked Kyomi-Po with Hwangju. By 1920, there was a daily round-trip train from Pyongyang to Kyomi-Po and several local services from Hwangju. Between 1915 and 1928, a new major railway project was underway on the opposite side of the country. This East Coastal Line was built in stages between Wonsan and Hweryong, a small city on the northern border with China along the banks of the Tumen River. The line took its name from the former province of Hamgyong, which had stretched as far south as Wonsan and far north into the northeastern border regions of Korea. The Hamgyong line connected many of the region's major centres, from Wonsan and Hweryong to other cities such as Hamhung and Chongjin. Further south along the new Hamgyong line, the Chosen Forestry Railway Company, this is one of those smaller private companies I mentioned earlier, had plans to construct a line linking Hamhung on the east coast with Manpo on the northern border, in order to exploit the rich forests in the heart of the peninsula. By the mid-1920s, the initial section of line, named the Hamnam Line, connected the city of Hamhung with Shinhung. In 1929, the privately owned Domun Railway, which had previously built a connection from Sangsambong at the very end of the Hamgyong line, up the river to the town of Kangali, was nationalised by the Chosen Government Railway, bringing it into national ownership and officially rebranding it as the West Tomun Line, with plans to extend the railway line further along the border to Eungi, modern-day Sonbong, on the coast. That same year saw more rail construction in the region, as a new line connecting Musan and Komusan was inaugurated and named the Hambuk Line. This development was part of ongoing plans to exploit the iron deposits beneath the Musan region, and was overseen by the newly inaugurated North Chosen Colonia Railway Company Limited. 1929 also saw the opening of the first section of the Tonghae-Pukpu Line, planned to connect up the Korean east coast. This 1929 section connected the terminus of Anbyeon with the coastline, whilst avoiding the busy centre of Wonsan. This connection to Hupgok Station, today known as Myeonggo, would be the start of a planned railway link all the way down the coast to Pohang, near the city of Busan. In 1932, the Chosen Government Railway began to lease a small line from the Kaechon Light Railway Company, running between Sinanju Station on the Gyeonggi Line up to Cheondong. The government themselves built a new railway line that same year, connecting Suncheon with Cheondong, latterly nationalising the Kaechon Light Railway Line, creating the Kaechon Line between Sinanju and Kaechon, and merging the Kaechon-Cheondong section with their new line to create the start of the Manpo Line, running from Suncheon to Kaechon. Meanwhile, the project in the far northeast to connect the militarily significant port of Eungi with the Korea-Manchuria border had been completed, thanks to the line's importance as a transport route for Japanese military and cargo to reach northern China. This new line, which had taken the moniker the East Tomun Line to match the West Tomun Line, was finally merged with its twin to form the Tomun Line. At the same time as the new East Tomun Line was completed and merged, Namyang Station on the line opened its tiny Namyang-Gukyeong Line, which served as a border crossing between the Chosen Government Railway and the Manchukuo National Railway Network, or Mantetsu. By 1933, the Chosen Forestry Railway, which ran the Hamnam Line, had been subsumed by the new Shinhung Railway, a subsidiary of Chosen Railway, which now controlled the Hamnam Line. 1933 saw the completion of their new extension, which continued north from Shinhung to Pujeonhoban Station. A year later, in 1934, the entirety of the Tomun Line, along with the portion of the Hamgyong Line from Chongjin to Hweryong, was handed over to Mantetsu, to be run by the government in Manchuria. The Chongjin-Hweryong section remained part of the Hamgyong Line, albeit under new ownership, whilst the section of the Tomun Railway, running from Sangsambong to Namyang, was renamed the North Chosen West Line, and the section running from Namyang to Eungi was renamed the North Chosen East Line. The Shinhung Railway Company continued to expand its network, and eventually completed a line between Oro, today known as Yonggwang, and Sasu, known as the Changjin Line. This route was built in order to aid construction of a new hydroelectric power station on the Changjin River, and exploit the resources of the area, specifically the thriving forestry industry. A year later, in 1935, a small service opened between Eungi and Najin, called the Eungna Line. Meanwhile, back down to the Shinhung Railway Company, they'd expanded their network south by 1936, linking West Hamhung Station with Soho Station near Hungnam. 1937 saw the completion of a new line between the cities of Kilju and Hyesan, aptly named the Kil-hye Line. This project was part of a strategy to connect up the Paektusan region with national transport infrastructure, in order to take advantage of the abundant forest and mineral resources. Originally planned by the Yanggang Forest Development Railway, by the time work had started, it was under the control of the Chosen Government Railway. That same year, the Tonghae-Pukpo Line reached its terminus at Yangyang. The extension to Pohang to link up with the Tonghae-Nampu Line was never completed, so this is where the line ends. Further north, however, extensions were being rapidly completed, with the Manpo Line reaching Kangye, the modern-day capital of Jagang Province, in December 1937, only 50 or so kilometers from its final destination of Manpo, on the border with Manchuria. In 1938, the Shinhung Railway Company, operating the Shinhung, Changjin and Namhung lines, was absorbed by Chosen Railway. All lines under the Shinhung Railway Company remained the same, with the exception of the Hamnam Line, which was split into the Hamnam Line from Hamhung to Shinhung, and the new Songhung Line from Shinhung to Pujeonhoban. That same year, a new privately owned railway company opened a line named the Oncheon Line, running from the port city of Nampo northwards towards Oncheon. The new Chosen Pyeongan Railway Company Limited began running passenger trains back and forth to bring locals to and from the hot springs in the area. In 1939, the privately owned Gyeongbuk Railway Company opened an industrial railway line in order to serve the Supung hydroelectric dam operating on the Amnok River. The line ran from Cheongju on the Gyeonggi Line to Cheongsu at the border. A tiny supplementary line, the Supung Line, ran right up to the dam to aid construction. Further upstream, the Manpo Line finally reached Manpo, completing its route from Suncheon to the Chinese border. In July 1939, the Jian-Manpo Amnok River Railway Bridge was inaugurated, linking Korea with Manchuria in this region by rail. 1941 saw the completion of the Pyeongwon Line. The first section, connecting Sopo to Yangdok, had actually been completed in 1936 and tentatively named the West Pyeongwon Line. Whilst the eastern section, connecting Kowon with Yangdok, was inaugurated as the East Pyeongwon Line. They were merged in 1941 to form the Pyeongwon Line, the first route to link east and west north of the 38th parallel. In 1943, the Chosen Magnesite Development Railway opened a new line to exploit the magnesite deposits found in the Komdok region of northern Korea. They began construction in March 1943, completing the route by December. The line connecting Yohaejin on the Hamgyong Line with Myeongyang, known today as Paekgumsan, was originally known as the Hamnam Line, confusing given the other Hamnam Line being operated further south by the Shinhung Railway Company. 1944 saw the Hanbuk Line renamed, becoming the Musan Line, as the North Chosen Colonial Railway Company Limited was swallowed up by the Chosen Government Railway. In the same region, the Pengmu Line was completed, having been begun in 1932, starting in Paegan on the Kil-hye Line, with the aim of improving the logistics for forestry products in the region and encouraging development. The route was connected up at Musan Station in December 1944 hence the name Pengmu for Paegam and Musan. 1945 saw the completion of the Soson line under the privately owned West Choson Central Railway. Soson literally means West Korea and ran between Sunghori and Tokchon. On the 15th of August 1945, the Japanese government capitulated to the Allied powers, bringing an end to the Second World War and liberating Korea from 30 years of occupation by Tokyo. The victorious powers set about dividing Korea in two, and the Soviet military began operating trains north of the 38th parallel as early as the 26th of August. A year later, on the 10th of August 1946, the Provisional People's Committee for North Korea and Soviet Civil Administration nationalized all the railway lines in the country, bringing them under the control of the People's Committee for Transport. This would go on to become the Ministry of Transportation in 1948, when the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was officially proclaimed, with the operation of railways being taken over by the Chosunmin Jujui Inmin Kongwaguk Cheoldoseong, officially the State Railway of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or Kukchol for short, meaning State Rail. As a result of the end of Japanese rule, a lot of changes happened in quick succession. The most significant change was the division of the former Gyeonggi Line, which ran from Seoul to Sinuiju. The northern section, from Sinuiju to Pyongyang, was renamed the Pyeonggi Line, whilst the southern section, running from Pyongyang to the 38th parallel, was renamed the Pyeongbu Line. The nearby Tonghae-Pukpu Line, running from Anbyeon to Yangyang, now also found itself running over the new borderline, and so was cut short at Kamho Station to form the new Kumgangsan-Cheongnyun Line, running through the Diamond Mountain region. The Gyeongmi-Po Line, running from Hwanghae to Songnim, was renamed the Songnim Line. The Great Hamgyong Line, running up the east coast from Wonsan into the mountains of the northeast to end in Hwaryong, was divided into three. The section between Chongjin and Hwaryong was merged with the North Chosen East and North Chosen West lines, and the small Ungna Line, to create the new Hambuk Line, running from Chongjin to Najin via Namyang. The section running between Kowon and Chongjin was merged with the Pyeongwon Line to form the new Pyeongna Line, connecting the capital with Chongjin and a planned extension to continue up the coast towards Najin. The final section of the Hamgyong Line, connecting Wonsan with Kowon, was merged with the northern half of the Gyeongwon Line, which was now cut off at the 38th parallel. This new line was named Gangwon Line, after the province, to connect Gowon with Wonsan and the southern parts of the province. After the Korean War, the Inter-Korean Demilitarized Zone meant Pyongyang was the furthest station that could be accessed, with Kagok Station being closed and Woljongni and Chorwon stations being abandoned within the DMZ itself. The former Shinhung Railway Company network around Hamhung was rebranded, with the southern line being renamed the Soho Line, today used exclusively by passenger trains as a commuter line between Hamhung and Hungnam. The Songhung and Hamnam lines were combined into the new Shinhung Line, and the Changjin Line was left alone. The other Hamnam line further north was rebranded the Kumgol Line. The Pyeongnam and Oncheon lines were merged to form one continuous Pyeongnam line from Pyongyang to Oncheon. During the Korean War in 1952, in the far northeastern corner of the DPRK, a wooden bridge was built over the Tumen River. This would serve as the first railway bridge between the DPRK and the Soviet Union, a vital link between Pyongyang and its major communist ally. This isn't the bridge you see today. That was built in 1959 as the Korean-Russian Friendship Bridge. However, a line running across the river began at Honggi Station on the Hanbuk Line and crossing to Kazan in the USSR, aptly named the Honggi Line, was first opened during the Korean War. From here, trains could connect to the Trans-Siberian Railway and head all the way to Moscow for the first time. (1953) saw the end of conflict in Korea, and, more importantly, the opening of a new route from the town of Kujang on the Manpo Line. The Tokpal Line had been in development since the 1940s. However, the Pacific War got in the way of Japanese development, and so construction was delayed by a decade. A year later, another railway construction project was completed at Kujang. The new Pyeongdok Line was created by merging a handful of smaller lines, including the Sosan Line and the former Pyongyang Colliery Line. This new route ran from Pyongyang to Kujang, where it met the Manpo Line and the new Tokpal Line. Further south, in Hwanghae region, refurbishment was completed on a series of smaller railway lines linking the city of Sariwon, capital of North Hwanghae, and Haeju, a major port city and capital of South Hwanghae. The various routes making up the Sariwon-Haeju main line would eventually be merged into one route, named the Hwanghae-Chongnyeon Line in 1958. A year later, in 1959, a small construction project on a tiny new railway line was completed in the far north, from the town of Manpo on the Chinese border up to a new dam construction site. The route was designed to move construction materials to and from the dam, and so the opening itself was not a particularly grand affair. However, we'll come back to this in the 1980s. The Kumgol Line in Hamgyong region was extended in 1962, reaching its namesake town, Kumgol. The route was still being primarily used to transport magnesite ore from the mines in the mountains down to the Pyeongna Line at Yeohaejin, where it could be transported away for processing. Northbound traffic was primarily coal, empty storage cars, and supplies for the mine workers. In 1963, a new line connecting Sugyo and Cholgwang was opened. This finally completed a route between Sariwon and Cholgwang, so the entire route was merged and named the Unyul Line. The long-awaited Cheongna Line opened in 1965, connecting the city of Chongjin and the far northern port of Najin for the first time, without needing to take the long way round via Hwaeryong on the Hanbuk Line. With the completion of the Cheongna Line, the entire route from Pyongyang to Najin was merged, creating the longest line on the entire Korean state railway network, the Pyeongna Line. Boasting 135 stations and over 800 kilometers of rail, the Pyeongna Line was now able to run cars straight to Moscow from Pyongyang, by running trains from Pyongyang to Najin, and then connecting them directly onto the Hanbuk Line and then Honggi Line to Kazan in Russia. The early 1970s saw an issue, however. The Pyeongna Line remained the only major east-west railway in northern Korea, and thus plans were made to relieve rail congestion on this line by creating a new southern east-west connection. In 1972, just such a connection was completed with the opening of the Cheongyeon-Icheon Line, connecting Pyeongsan in the west with Sepo-Cheongyeon in the east, and linking up the Pyeongbu and Gangwon lines. A few years later, in 1976, the Tokpal Line extension from Parwon to Kusong was completed, and the entire line was renamed the Cheongyeon-Parwon Line. Similarly, the Kilhye Line between Kilju and Hyesan was electrified 2 years later and was also renamed, taking the moniker Paektusan Cheongyeon, after the sacred Mount Paektu, which is situated in Nyangang province, of which Hyesan is the capital. In 1986, engineers in the DPRK completed the Grand West Sea Barrage, a huge dam across the mouth of the Taedong River, considered by many to be one of the DPRK's greatest engineering achievements. Included in the construction was a railway line, which used the barrage as a bridge across the river mouth. This opened in 1986 under the name the Sohae Kamun Line, literally West Sea Barrage Line, between Cheolgwang and Nampo. 2 years later, in 1988, the Kumgol Line extension to Muhak had been completed, bringing it to where it is today. And in the far north near the Chinese border, the tiny Unbong construction line had been taken over and expanded into a new main line running through the mountains between Manpo and Hyesan. It was inaugurated as the Pukpu Neryuk Line, and plans were afoot to extend the line further north from Hyesan in the coming years. The final development on this exhaustive list is the 2017 Samjiyon Line. During the 1980s and 90s, construction on the extension for the Pukpu Neryuk Line had begun, however they were never completed. In the 2010s, construction began on a new route, using the infrastructure left behind from the initial construction. This new line ran from Hyesan's secondary railway station, Wiyon, and headed north to terminate at the city of Samjiyon, the gateway to Mount Paektu, which itself saw significant renovation only 2 years later in 2019. And that brings us pretty much up to today. Congratulations if you've made it all the way to the end of this video. As you can see, the history of the Korean State Railway is extensive, and it's easy to fall down a rabbit hole when researching the heritage of the system, as it turns out. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please check out my Patreon, which is linked in the description. And if you enjoyed the Korean music from this video, I have a music channel, DPRK Explained Music, also linked below, so check that out too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.